Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning-fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.
Did you know Nissan EVs have traveled 8 billion miles? Just a quick trip to Pluto and back. And what did we learn along the way? Well, that an EV can take on the world, like the Nissan Leaf. It can move racing forward and take your breath away, like the all-new Nissan Ariya. We learned to make EVs that electrify. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. 2023 Ariya has limited availability. All-wheel drive expected availability early 2023, subject to change.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. We have a special one for you tonight, a little break in our That One Play series to talk to Brent Urban, Ravens defensive lineman. Brent, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, Ken?
It's great to have you on. Really appreciate you making the time for us. One of my favorite Ravens in terms of a player that falls a little bit under the radar sometimes, but is there making some key plays. Want to hear a little bit about your story and hopefully really get into some cool inside football with regard to defensive line play.
Cool.
Now let's talk background a little bit, because you're coming up on 2023 and you're signed now for 2023, which is, I guess, a big milestone every year at this point in your career, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was nice to kind of get the deal done early. I don't have to kind of worry about it. Last off season, I waited a little while and had to do a workout with the Ravens. I was coming off injury, obviously. So yeah, it's nice to get that out of the way and, feel settled in for next year.
We saw that Daryl Worley got signed the same day. So a couple of guys the Ravens obviously love. And with Daryl Worley, the number of times he was bopping on and off the roster, the Ravens really like him to do it that many times. It's not like he's this variable they're fitting in. They're taking a chance on losing every time, but they've obviously got handshake agreements on the side with a player like this. Last year, and this is something obviously the Ravens do fairly regularly, they will cut players oftentimes on these vet min contracts and then bring them back as soon as they've snuck a few of the younger players onto the IR after they make the opening season. Is that something you would expect as a possibility in this year for the Ravens?
Yeah, I suppose so. I understand. I think it's a smart way to build your roster, honestly. You can fit extra guys in and make it a 55-man or 56-man, whatever the case is. So, I think as far as, the contracts that are that makes sense to do it with, I'm definitely falling into that category. And, I did it last year, obviously, so I could see it happening again. Absolutely.
All right. Well, outstanding. That certainly is very valuable to the Ravens. Now, I was looking through your Wikipedia page and I found some interesting things about you I didn't know. And, football fans are not always hockey fans. I do happen to be a hockey fan, but in this case, I noticed, first of all, you're the 26th Canadian ever drafted into the NFL, that's pretty damn good. And also that you played a lot of international hockey growing up?
Yeah, I played hockey was my first love growing up. I started playing when I was 7, then stopped for a little bit, and then picked it back up when I was 11, I believe. Yeah, loved hockey. Played on a really successful team. Obviously, I was born in like the mecca of hockey, basically. So minor hockey was, everything there. And I played for one of the best teams. So we'd play like 100 games a year almost. We'd win like 90 or so of them. There was, I think, like 6 or 7 NHL players from that team. I think probably like 4 or so still playing. So wow. Yeah, that was my first love. Played on a really good hockey team. I think as far as my size and that stuff goes, there's a point in time where I had to make a decision. I felt like, hockey isn't necessarily a big man's game, at least not anymore, kind of the way it's trending. And, decided to pick football.
So, Zdeno Chara immediately comes to mind when talking about guys your size, but what position did you play?
I was a left wing actually, so I'd kind of dump and chase, get after the defenseman, stand in front of the net,
Right.
that whole kind of thing. I like to play really physical, so it kind of fit my skill set well. Though the game's kind of getting faster and smaller, I didn't really necessarily want to be a purely an enforcer, so I didn't see maybe a professional career for myself, and obviously decided to go with football.
All right, fascinating, just absolutely fascinating stuff. So I noticed you're labeled a 2-star recruit going to Virginia, but tell me a little bit about the recruitment process going there.
Yeah, I guess my dad was a huge help in kind of getting attention and just getting the recruiting, I guess, pipeline you could say going. There would be some schools that would come up to Canada, like maybe Eastern Michigan, University of Buffalo, that sort of thing. I was trying to obviously potentially go somewhere a little more high profile. So my dad, we'd kind of pack up the car, and certain weekends there'd be like the Penn State football camp, and we would go down there. And so my dad was really great as far as arranging these trips to kind of gain buzz and attention, and start getting letters that way. So that's kind of how we drummed up, I guess, attention as far as the recruiting process went. So, yeah, we'd load up the car and kind of drive all over the place. That was, somewhat close, Michigan, those type of places. And I think we went out to a bunch of places after my like sophomore year. I went to like a Nike camp and those sort of things. And then the following junior year, I guess, when I came back to high school, I was starting to get a lot of letters kind of from all over the place. And that's kind of where it took off.
So how many offers did you end up getting?
I think I had like 15 to 20, somewhere in there, mainly ACC schools. My best offer, I guess, at the time was like Notre Dame, but that was a loaded recruiting class with like Stephon Tuitt and Lewis Nix and all those kind of guys. So I decided to go with Virginia, somewhere I saw that I would kind of play a little more. I wanted a school that was, kind of up there academically. So I chose Virginia.
What'd you study in school?
I was a history major. Yeah, I love history. So I was going in thinking I was going to be like a business major or something. I think kind of dealing with the time management and that sort of thing, I decided to go with history. At least this is a subject I really enjoyed. So
something you might do after football, go back and teach or anything like that?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not totally sure. Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily would like to be a teacher. I think it was just a good basis for me to learn to read and write like critically and just study things that I enjoyed, honestly.
All right, very cool. Career at Virginia included some wild statistics, including something we'd see in the NFL, which is a lot of batted passes one year. You had 9, and you didn't even play the whole year that year, right?
Yeah, so that was my senior year. I think I played the first 6 games. I think it was 8 games, and I had like 8 batted balls through the first like 8 games. I think I was tied for the lead in the ACC with like most, I guess, batted passes or whatever. It might have been in the nation. I was like really high up there, and then I happened to get injured, and that kind of obviously slowed the stats down. But yeah, it was that was kind of my like breakout year. Where after my junior year, it was kind of like, is this guy really going to be a legit NFL prospect? And I probably would have been like a low round draft pick, maybe free agent type guy. And then I kind of had that senior year that had a lot of really good stats and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, it was cut short due to injury, but that was kind of like what was going on in my career during that time. I was getting hurt a lot, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it worked out really well, and thankfully that year I made a lot of plays and got drafted.
So take us a little bit through the draft day experience. Everyone wants to hear that, and got drafted, picked by the Ravens in the 4th round, and talk a little bit about just where you were on draft day and what kind of a special deal that was for you.
Yeah, it was great. We had I had all my parents and little sister down. We had a place in Virginia. We were all watching the first, those couple of days. I did think I was going to get drafted a little higher, so I was like one of those guys, kind of in the moment, getting a little frustrated and seeing some guys' names where I was like, oh man, I'm better than him, type of thing. But yeah, I think I was a comp pick in the 4th round. So obviously Ozzy called me, and, I was ecstatic, growing up, kind of watching those defenses, Baltimore and the Steelers, and watching like the 5 techniques they had. And, it was just when I was a young kid, these were the teams that I watched and played a lot in Canada, being, they're relatively close. So yeah, I was ecstatic talking to Ozzy and Harbs, and, it was just a blessing, man. So I was just super excited, and yeah, the rest is history, I guess.
That's very cool. Rookie year. I don't know if this was your rookie year or your second year in camp, but the rookie year you had the ACL injury and you missed the whole year. That was really unfortunate. The thing I remember, and the first kind of memory I have from you with camp, so I'm not sure if it was 14 or 15. It was probably 15. You were playing defensive line. It was some sort of a goal line package they were running for a few minutes in that series. And Harbaugh specifically was getting on you about not being low enough and fast enough, and you're not ready for this. And he's doing it from 50 yards away, or 60 feet away, maybe, let's say. If he couldn't have possibly seen, and it's almost to me like he was trying to break you, being the biggest guy, like you try and break the biggest guy in a platoon if you're a drill sergeant.
Yeah, I have such a great relationship with Harbs, and kind of when I was young, first coming in and dealing with the injuries, I think that was, he was the type of guy to, if he's not saying anything to you, I don't think he really likes you, type of thing. So he was a guy who often challenged me, and, would be like, look how big you are. Like, why aren't you making plays, type of thing. And that kind of just lit a fire under me, and, kind of allowed me to, I guess, take my game to the next level. Obviously there was a lot of injuries and that sort of thing, but Harbs was a constant guy to kind of get after me and like fire me up, type of thing, early in my career. And I think that kind of made me maybe a little more mentally tough, and kind of realized the gifts I had as far as being able to play at that level.
So the 2015 season, we'll talk a little bit about. You waited a while to get on the field. So it's week 12 or so. And I know the Ravens have had some guys in the past who, even if were healthy scratches during a period like this. Paul Kruger comes to mind as a guy, great pass rusher, and he had a hard time getting on the field because he really didn't have a big special teams presence. But take us through a little bit of 2015, what was going on, and finally getting activated.
Yeah, so 15, actually, I tore my bicep in camp that year. And that put me out for how long was it? Like 3 to 4 months timeline. It was early in camp where, there was a possibility that I'd be able to play. I think at that time you had like 1 or 2 guys you could designate IR to return. And so, there was like the little glimmer that it would be a possibility that I'd be able to come back that year. And then I think it must have been like week 8, week 9. I was starting to practice. They were like activating me and allowing me to practice. And I guess they just wanted to see what I had, at that point. It was ACL first year and then torn bicep the second. At a certain point, you got to like show your worth, and in order like to keep me around, being through all those injuries and that sort of thing. So I was lucky enough, they allowed me. I think I was IR to return. I was back. I think I came back for like 6 games. That was the maximum amount I was even allotted to come back for. So there was no real point where I was inactive. Like, it was just like I was healthy. They felt I was ready after like 2 weeks of practice, and I got out there, and it was obviously that Cleveland Browns block, and I didn't play many plays on defense. It was moving so fast for me at the time. And then was lucky enough to make a play like that to kind of, show that I was here, and kind of allowed me to, I don't know, just make a name for myself, I guess.
Break down that kick 6 for us a little bit. I know that you I want you to talk about like how you had to maneuver against the opposing defensive lineman, but I know also that Will Hill picked the ball up, and fans are fickle. They're rooting for draft picks sometimes. The Ravens, I don't think, had completely given up on the season at that point, even though things looked very grim, obviously. But Will Hill picked it up, ran it in. As I understand it, Cleveland Browns fans are very happy about it, which is
yeah.
So, take us to what you did on that play.
Yeah, so it was just like a max block type thing. I was aligned in the C gap, I believe, and next to me was Lawrence Guy and Chris Canty, I believe. They might have been swapped, but either way, they were next to me. Um, you just kind of get off low and try to slip your way through. If you're further out in the C gap, the chance of the ball going on your head are a little lower, so you're trying to kind of slip more and lean, I guess, bend inwards to the ball. So when Lawrence or Chris, whoever it was, they kind of took a good chunk out of that tackle and got him to collapse down. So I was able to kind of like knife my way through and just get my hand up. I couldn't believe it hit my hand, and just saw Will Hill pick it up. And, it was kind of like one of the craziest plays I've ever seen, and didn't really know what happened. Everything was so kind of moving so fast, and I was so nervous for this game, and for it to end like that, it was just like unbelievable. I really didn't know what was going on.
We have a thing here in Baltimore that pretty much everybody knows everybody somehow. You can always kind of like name one person and then, oh, I know him kind of thing. You have one of two prints of that, as I understand it, from the Ravens, or a Ravens photographer at that time, Sabina Moran, who is the wife of my exercise guy. So just tonight I was working out. I was telling him, hey, I've interviewed Brent Urban tonight. And he said, oh, my wife did a photo of him. And so maybe a 16 by 20 or something. And he wondered if you still had it.
I actually do. Yeah. I got this framed picture that was really cool. Kind of the whole like like field goal block team kind of going off, and the obviously making the block. So I do have that still. Yeah, that's a prized possession for sure. So it's it's really cool.
All right, very cool, very cool. So the Ravens, during your entire career, certainly, and really during their entire history, have been a rotational defensive line team. So they rely on what I would think is a deeper set of defensive linemen for fewer snaps each. So it's interesting, a player like Calais Campbell comes here late in his career, and his snap counts gets pretty drastically reduced. Has that been a good system for you, do you think?
I think so. I think, especially this part of my career, obviously I had a lot of injuries early. A lot of concerns with me, I think, from decision makers is just, how long is he able to sustain kind of with the injuries he had early on. And I think, being a rotational guy and kind of like getting used to, you got 15 or 20 plays to kind of make the most out of has been a thing that it's just a role that I've kind of was like forced to go into because of like how I was injured. A team wasn't going to make that like big commitment to me being like a starter or that type of thing with, my injury history. So it was just something I got used to. And when I was cut and had to go to the Bears, it's just a role you kind of get used to. And honestly, I really enjoy it. I kind of know how to like get the most out of those plays. Sometimes my body, like, it allows me to, I don't know, maybe have a little more longevity as far as, I'm not playing those 60 plays a game, and, my body's like not killing me on the week to week, where I kind of feel like I can really get after it for those 15 or 20. And it's not like a guy who's playing 60 plays, you gotta like maintain your energy a certain way. So if it's I don't know, like a roll out the other way, you're going to kind of like, take it off a little bit. But kind of as far as how I play, it's 15, 20 all out, and it's kind of what I'm used to, and it's kind of the role that I've been given for a while now. So I enjoy it. It's kind of all I know at this point, and obviously I've been successful doing that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really think of it that way in terms of managing your energy on field, but obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers and some other teams who've really been known for not rotating nearly as much, even with a four-man front that, Tuitt and Hayward have played a ton of interior snaps, and it must be difficult for them to be a super high energy player every play. I mean, they're great players, but boy, I think it would be difficult.
Yeah, it's tough. I think, when you watch guys like that who are playing a ton of plays, that you can kind of notice there's certain points where you kind of have to like kick it back a little bit. It's impossible to go absolutely all out for 60 plays. It's just not possible. So, I'm obviously a proponent of rotational D lines. Like, you're just able to go harder. whether it be, whether you're playing even 40 plays compared to 60, 60 is a lot. So, I obviously am a proponent of that. And I've also just in my like D-line studies and all that kind of stuff, you kind of notice just how guys are able to do that, and there are plays taken off. Like there just has to be.
It's interesting because you evolved in your final year with the Ravens into kind of an Iron Man. You played over 550 snaps. You were in there for over 50% of the plays, which really seems, that to me is the point at which it's a very heavily used lineman in the Ravens scheme. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I guess my fifth year, I was coming off the Liz Frank injury. So that like fourth year was obviously, my big year, and I was like the guy on third down and all the packages and, that whole sort of thing. And obviously I got hurt. It was obviously unfortunate and that sort of thing. But luckily the Ravens, they kind of made that commitment to have me come back, which I was ecstatic. At that point I was like, am I going to play again? I have no idea kind of what's going to happen. And so when I came back, it was kind of that similar role. They didn't really have a guy they had younger guys who they had drafted, but I was kind of still able to like maintain that position I had the year before for my fourth year. So it was really just kind of playing the same amount that in that role that I kind of established for myself the year before. But yeah, it was the most I've played. It's definitely kind of, like you just said, it's kind of the high end of like a Ravens defensive lineman would play. So, I mean, I had a ball. Obviously, it's fun playing a lot too. So it was a little bit different, but it was a great experience for me, and was one of, I guess, highlights of my career, I guess.
I would have said it was your best season in a lot of ways. Just a wonderful year there, playing a lot. One of the questions I have for you, your position, and you're certainly not a pure 5 tech, but is there really room for a pure 5 tech in the NFL anymore, with the way opposing teams offenses like to run out of 11 personnel, force the nickel, leave you with 6 set pieces. I'm just going through this quickly for the people in the air. I know you know this, and leave you only with typically a nose tackle and a 3 technique on the defensive line with 2 outside linebackers.
I'm obviously biased. Really am a prototypical 5 technique as far as my like size and all that goes. But I do think a kind of defensive line group is at its best when you kind of have different body types. You kind of are able to handle certain situations. Like I guess you could take this year in the NFL, the top run was still duo, right? And a lot of duo is run out of 2 tight end sets, like a YY wing sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a guy with long arms and it's a little bit bigger than say like, I don't know, like a 250, 260 pound pass rusher, you can put a guy like me or Calais or something head up on that down tight end, and it's going to kind of create havoc. So not only that, but just in terms of handling an offensive tackle to 2 gap, you'll see smaller guys in different like get off fronts. They'll just kind of get like BIM blocked up the field, and that B gap will be wide open. So I think there's a place for it. I don't necessarily know that teams need a ton of 5 techniques, but I think it kind of just adds another way to attack an offense. There's so much like varied offenses and that are just will attack you different ways, So I think you have to be ready in case that happens, and carrying a 5 technique on your roster will definitely help stop certain plays and certain offenses.
Do you think the Ravens looked at you and said, whether it was originally when you were drafted or when they brought you back and said, hey, this is a guy we know can play either 3 or 5. And so if we need him for some early down 3 plays, he's good for that. And when we're in base defense, obviously we use him as a 5. But do you think that was part of the selling value, or the icing on the cake, whatever you want to call it, with re-signing Brent Urban?
I think so. Yeah. Like people know I can stop the run at a 5 technique. I think my versatility is a big factor in stopping the run. Like if you look back to when I played for the Bears, there was actually a couple of games where I was playing heavily just at 0 technique. And so I've kind of done it from every position. I feel comfortable at every position, honestly. 5 technique, yes, that's the prototypical, and that's where like everybody wants to put me. and it's kind of accentuates what I'm good at, obviously. But I think just my versatility period, you can kind of put me anywhere. I'm going to be the same kind of physical stack and shed player, really whoever you line me up on.
All right, very good. I want to talk about some things, hopefully give you a chance to talk some inside football to us. So this last section here was great in terms of just hearing really cool stuff that we don't normally get to talk about. One of the things that will come up regularly is that the interior defensive lineman, less often the tackler. And I always try and have this conversation with people about how defensive linemen don't necessarily.
Did you know Nissan EVs have traveled 8 billion miles? Just a quick trip to Pluto and back. And what did we learn along the way? Well, that an EV can take on the world, like the Nissan Leaf. It can move racing forward and take your breath away, like the all-new Nissan Ariya. We learned to make EVs that electrify. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. 2023 Ariya has limited availability. All-wheel drive expected availability early 2023, subject to change.
With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning-fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.
Rack up huge tackle numbers, but they will impede run plays and funnel run plays in a good way. Maybe talk about that a little bit in terms of what are some of your keys that you're reading on a run play that you're trying to work towards sending the runner in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously, like one of the more popular runs, I guess you'd say, is like a zone open where it's like gun near or something like that. And you're the 3 technique to the running back. So you kind of know they're probably going to run away from where the running back's lined up. And you're probably going to get like a combo block, I guess, from the guard and tackle. Mm-hmm. You can create a lot of space for others with how you kind of play both blocks and kind of like suck up those 2 blocks in order to like get it to cut back to the C gap. Or if I play a little like backside, it'll help it like kind of cut front side. So yeah, there's a ton of ways to play each run. And I think, I guess stopping the run out of, stopping 11 personnel run, like you were talking about earlier, is a lot of it is just kind of honestly taking up 2 blocks inside and kind of just holding the line where it is, because you don't want any leakage in certain areas. It's obviously going to create a hole for the running back. So I think you're very conscious of the run in certain areas or just like the formation and that sort of thing. And so if I know I'm getting a combo block, I'm not really going to try to like shoot the gap and make the play like a lot of defenses do, like, I don't know, San Francisco or whatever, where they're just trying to like get through the combo block and they don't care if the linebacker is, getting blocked by the guard or whoever. So a lot of it's just how you kind of take the space away and allow others, I guess, to flow freely to the ball.
Okay, so that's a great point you're making. Is that you could choose, and it is a matter of choice then to be the penetrator, try and make the play yourself, or allow the linebacker to do his job, and hopefully you cover a guard up from getting to him.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of ways to play it, and I made a play against Pittsburgh where it was just like the same zone open over and over again, and then eventually you'll just kind of like do it, like try to just split it one time, or that sort of thing. So there's so many ways to play it, and defensive line is such an interesting position because there's so many different body types and ways to play each block. The way I like to play is obviously to just stack guys up and allow guys to make plays and that sort of thing. But there's definitely a time and place to kind of do a change up because they just think they see me, they think I'm just going to kind of, just sit on the double team and allow like Roquan to come downhill or whatever the case may be. And then that's kind of where, in my opinion, it kind of offers like a chance to make a play for yourself, I guess. But a lot of that like 11 personnel, it's become like so prevalent in the NFL. You're just both your nose and three are pretty much just getting doubles across the board, and the running back's just going to try to find a way to get open. So in those sort of situations, you got to see, are they trying to hit it front side or get it to cut back to that C gap? And I think you're going to play it different based on that. If they're going to cut back to the C gap, I might play into the tackle a little bit more, just so there's no space in that certain area. So yeah, there's a ton of ways to play it, and I think you just try to see the intent of the offense more than anything, with how to kind of play those blocks, I guess.
Obviously, defensive linemen who get to a certain age, probably have the sort of understanding of the game that you've got, but you seem to be able to articulate it very well. And I'm wondering, is there a future in coaching for you coming out of this? Is this something you maybe want to go into?
I'm not so sure. I think honestly, I'd be more into kind of an evaluation role than anything. I really just like watching defensive linemen and seeing like the intricacies of the position. That's kind of my favorite thing. I don't think I'm patient enough to sit through with, someone to try to teach them over and over again, that sort of thing. So I don't know about coaching. I think I've just played for so long, had so many experiences, and have enjoyed watching certain guys play, all sorts of different ways. And that's kind of, built my knowledge up.
Outstanding. Just fantastic stuff. Let's talk about another element of your game. Obviously, something that was extremely successful in college, but still present in the pros is your ability to kind of read the quarterback so you can bat a pass down. Still, talk a little bit about what your process is for doing that.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is I guess it all starts with just knocking the offensive lineman back, right? You're gonna have more surface area to bat the pass if you're not, instead of being further away trying to jump and bat it, right? So I think number one, you're just trying to bull rush the offensive line, and I think that's the most important thing. Or also, I guess if you're getting the double team up front, like the center slide or something, then you can kind of play with it a little more, but you kind of have to not mess up the rush lanes there. So I think the number one thing is getting knocked back in terms of making it a more successful chance of doing so. I think down and distance also helps, if it's short and it's a pass to the sticks, or if it's shotgun, they're going to get the ball out quicker. You try to like think about all these things kind of going into the play and trying to figure out, all right, if they're going to get the ball out quick here, I should probably try to get my hands up a little earlier, sort of thing. So it's all kinds of stuff like that. There's certain guys who are it's really hard to bat their passes. I don't know, if they're just used to throwing it over guys or that sort of thing. So yeah, there's so many factors into it, but I think, number one, you're trying to just get to close to the quarterback as possible, and that's going to make it more successful.
Okay, so that kind of makes sense to me that your cone that you would cover in terms of where the ball could go down the field, say at a distance of 10 yards, would be a little broader if you're closer to the quarterback. Talk about the bull rush a little bit as it fits into this and what it's doing to that defensive lineman. Is there anything, like we had Ben Powers on and he was talking about, you want to make sure you punch that guy in the stomach occasionally and then he'll keep his arms down, kind of thing. What do you have to try and do to make sure that guard doesn't prevent you from getting your hands up?
Yeah, I think it's tough certain times. Like, I'll kind of get in a bull rush like too thick or too close to the offensive line, and you can just like feel their hands like in your pads and you can't jump at all. You're just stuck. But I think creating separation as far as, getting extension with the blocker is the most important thing. If they can't touch you, they're not going to be able to hold you, right? So I think having a good enough forward lean, extension, that sort of thing is going to allow them to stay off your body. And generate more force in pushing them too. So that's probably the biggest factor. You obviously try to make it violent and get them to knock back and that sort of thing. But I guess with a guy on you, if you have enough extension, you can at least get one arm off to impact the throw. So as long as you're keeping one arm free, I feel like I'm gonna at least make it tough for the quarterback to see, the receiver.
Now, you're a very long defensive lineman. You're over 34 inches of length, which is that's outstanding length for an offensive lineman. For a defensive lineman to have that is really exceptional. And then the defense, of course, has the option of one arm's longer than two. Can you use that to your advantage when you're batting down a pass, or do you have to maintain I guess they call it perpendicularity to the quarterback to get your arm up in such a situation?
Yeah, I guess so. I think the ball is rarely too high that I can't get to it. You know what I mean? That I really have to stretch out. It's usually at a point where it goes to the side of your arm more than anything. Quarterbacks are so good in the league, some of them, where they'll kind of see where your arm's going and throw it to the side of it. There's been so many times where the ball has gone right between my head and my hand, so it's rarely going over me. It's honestly more going around me. And I think quarterbacks do such a good job of kind of seeing where they can kind of throw it around me or sidearm or, whatever the case may be. So it makes it really tough, and I'm usually not concerned with getting my hands up as high as possible. It's more just kind of getting it to where I think they're going to throw it. But again, that's a really tough thing to do. And, I don't think that's why you're not seeing guys get 5 batted balls a game, or, it's still a relatively tough thing to do.
So I was going to say, you mentioned the odd arm angle that will come in with the intent of beating you. And you obviously, you play against a mobile quarterback in practice. I guess this would really apply to either of them, but Lamar more so, obviously. Who has an ability to throw the ball, side, 3/4, whatever he needs to do to get it around the lineman. Is that good practice for you working against some of the mobile quarterbacks today?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it a lot harder to bat balls. Obviously, guys like to get out of the pocket and that sort of thing. So, I think really good mobile quarterbacks, I guess, probably get a lot less batted balls. And definitely a guy like Lamar or Snoop, in practice they'll throw sidearms and you're just trying to get your arm to the side to bat it and stuff. So yeah, it makes it really difficult. Those quarterbacks are getting so good with changing their arm trajectory and that sort of thing. It makes it way harder for us to try to bat balls.
And you had a batted pass that got intercepted by Houston in the New Orleans game this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And take us through that individual play. What happened?
Yeah, so I guess that this is a play kind of really in line with what I was first talking about, where it's I knew it was a pass. I don't know if I had a read maybe the offensive lineman's stance or whatever the case may be at the time. And so I kind of widened out and I was like, all right, I'm going to bull rush this guy, basically. So I widened out, maybe backed up a little bit to generate a bit more force, and kind of just got a good bull rush where I felt like I was really knocking him back. And he was kind of replacing his hands, trying to get a hold of me, but I had enough extension where I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I was able to kind of freely just put my hand up. I did just a one hand up while I was pushing him with the other hand. And just got tipped a funny way that went right to Houston. So yeah, I was lucky enough to get him the ball, and it obviously made it a bigger play. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, another play where they're going to remember Houston on that play probably more than they're going to remember that you batted it. But story of your career, I guess, right?
Yeah, it happens.
That's such fantastic inside football. Maybe we go back to an individual player here, because you've had obviously the opportunity to play with Calais Campbell late in his career. Can you talk a little bit about him and what he means to the maybe the DL realm, and to you in particular, if you like, because you play the same position more or less?
Yeah, I was super excited to get a chance to play with him. Obviously, when I signed with Baltimore, he was a guy who I'd watch a ton. I watch a lot of other taller D linemen, because you have to play a certain way. I can't play like Javon Hargrave or, a guy who's a shorter, kind of quicker guy like that. So he was one of the defensive linemen I watched a ton. He was honestly one of my favorite players, kind of watching when he was with Jacksonville. So yeah, I was super excited. He's first and foremost just a great leader, a good dude. He's awesome to have in the room. He's just a guy you want to play with, man. He's gets us all fired up. He's just such a great presence to kind of have around. just a true leader, man. He always has something to say, and he's always trying to like coach up the finer points and certain things like that. So it's just a blast to be around. It's also fun for me just personally to see like how he plays certain things being a taller guy. We're honestly very different players in how we play blocks and stuff. So it's kind of interesting for me just to see how he does. You know, we're seeing the same blocks in training camp going against our offense, and I'm able to see, you know, what I do and what he does against the same thing. So it allows me to see a guy who's able to, he doesn't necessarily play as much stack and shed physical straight up as I do, right? He's a guy who's a lot more slippery and kind of gets in gaps and that kind of thing. So it's just interesting to me to see how he plays. And, you know, hopefully I think I borrowed, you know, some of his certain techniques and, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been great to have him around.
Two things that I would have looked at and said, these are things where you're like, and maybe one that you're this similar also, but his mantra was always playing very low. And it was very important for him at his height to make sure he stayed low. And when he does, he was unstoppable a lot of the time. And I see some of that in your game, is really wanting to try and play low despite your height. The other thing that you know, I don't think people realize as much about Calais as they should, is how quick he is as an over on stunts. I for a man his size to be able to move off the rear end of the guy next to him so easily it's very unusual to me.
For sure. Yeah, he's so good at running games, you know. His like the finer points of what he does is really impressive. You know, he kind of thinks of little things you wouldn't necessarily think of, and the angles, yeah, he takes on games. It's just, you know, he's a master at it, you know, and that's why he's still able to play at such a high level. Is his football IQ's, you know, off the charts, and especially with running games and, you know, pass rushing and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's been just really cool to see. Obviously, you mentioned just playing lower. As a tall guy, you have to, man, or you're going to get blown up. So I think, you know, all us tall guys have probably had a couple of cases where we got, you know, thrown out completely just in a double team or whatever the case is, playing too high. So if you're low and have long arms, you're going to have better natural leverage, you know, just being a taller guy. So it's a huge point of just being a tall player in the NFL.
Do you look for opportunities against that to go against shorter arm players? I mean, it seems like one of the things you could do is if you're crossing the face of a guard, for example, going into a center, they're going to typically be the shorter armed offensive lineman, period. Do you have an opportunity then? Do you try and do more one arm play in that situation, even take more advantage? Or is that an opportunity to go with both hands, knowing that you're going to be longer anyway? Or maybe just tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think personally, like I like to kind of go like two arms to one to generate a little more force. I think if you're going like straight in with one arm, you got to be like crazy. Like I think a guy like Travis Jones, I've seen him do that, but like, man, there's very few people that can kind of generate enough force with just one arm. You kind of have to go with 2 to 1 to kind of get that momentum going forward. I think, yeah, a lot of tall guys like going against centers, like in pass rush situations. They're usually shorter armed, and obviously lighter too. So they're kind of, you'll see a lot of like Calais will line up on centers a lot and kind of like bull them and use his length and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's, you know, it's a favorable matchup for sure, I think. But I guess another point is it's honestly nice playing. There's certain offensive tackles or like guys who play a lot like really upright who may have long arms, but it's their pad level is so high, you like love to bull rush them too. You know what I mean? Where it could be a huge 6'8" guy where you'd be like, man, he like there's no way guys could bull rush him. But then you watch him his tape and he's playing so upright that he just can't sit under it. And so those guys are honestly great to bull rush as well. So I think, yeah, the offensive lineman's pad level or their arm length, you know, if they kind of have both of that going for them, it'll be hard to bull rush them. But, you know, it's obviously hard to kind of see guys that have both.
All right. Outstanding stuff. maybe we talk a little bit about, where you are now in your career. And to me, a place really to be celebrated that you're an NFL survivor at this point, a guy who has been around the block. Unfortunately, didn't really work out in terms of getting that one really big contract. And I know that's, a shame. It's something that just happens to some players. But on the other hand, you played in the NFL for a very long time. You now have a presence undeniably on special teams on pretty much the kick block unit. You also play on the kick unit as well.
Yep. I usually play on both. Yeah, I was like a wing or tight end on field goal protection. Yeah.
And obviously still playing a good rotational role on defense. The question I would have is first of all, are there hopefully a couple more years of this, or do you have a sense of how many more years you'll still be wanting to play?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think early on, kind of my goal was always to play 10 years, and that's now next year, which is really crazy. Obviously the injuries and stuff that happened earlier in my career, it was tough. And, it's honestly not a thing I look at kind of, I guess, in a salty way. Like, I like should have got paid or, anything like that. I really don't look at it like that. I think all those injuries and, hard stuff that I kind of got through earlier in my career, like I wouldn't have the longevity I do now of trying to figure out where I'm so tapped into my body now, and I have a good sense of like how to stay healthy and how to protect myself and those sort of things. Yeah, it's hard to say. I think I'm probably just gonna just keep playing until it just doesn't feel right anymore. I'm not trying to really limit myself, but I thought I felt pretty good last year, and training for this year, my body still feels pretty good, and I think it's funny. Certain guys I talk to, they'll always say like, if you're out for the year with like an ACL, your rest of your body's not getting as beat up. So I wonder if I'm getting, maybe I'm getting a little extra, like, I have a little extra juice because I missed a lot of time, like on the shelf with more specific injuries like that. So it's hard to say, but, I still feel good at this point, still feel like I can make an impact, and, I'll probably just take it year by year. But, I love the game, and maybe because it's been taken away from me so much, I kind of really appreciate it more and just embrace it. So it's not something I view as me necessarily stopping. I think I'll just kind of play and, just take it kind of year by year.
So a lot of older players, some older players really don't like camp. They really don't. They just don't appreciate being there. They maybe don't appreciate the meeting room. But you talked a little bit about this. I don't want to speak for you. And there's other older players who clearly just love it. I mean, Terrell Suggs fell into this category the last several years of camp. It's like there's no other place this guy would rather be. And he could be on any of those 3 practice fields out at the castle, and you know exactly where he is because his voice is booming all over the place in terms of talking. Hey, talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts are about training camp itself, and is it any different now than it was when you were a rookie?
It's definitely different now. I think there's a lot more focus on rest and recovery than there was earlier. It's not just let's get as many reps as possible like it kind of was early on in my career. But yeah, you speak to guys like Terrell Suggs, I've always noticed like the best, like the great players, they always make it just the grind so much more fun. I've learned so much from guys like Terrell Suggs and, even Calais being here, where you got to make the grind fun. It's not necessarily fun waking up early every day and having these super long days of camp, but if you kind of just all come together and, just realize you're playing a child's game, and it's just what you've always wanted to do, sort of thing, and you just gotta, I guess my take is just to be like, when you're more of like an energy bringer and kind of go into training camp and just embrace each day of practice, you're going to have more fun than kind of dreading it, I guess you could say. But it's definitely a tough thing, and it was a lot harder early on my career. And I think there's a better focus with how NFL coaches are taking it now.
All right. Outstanding. Brent, been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. This is wonderful stuff. Tons of inside football. I know the folks are going to love it out there. Anywhere if people want to reach out and talk football with you online, they hit you up on Twitter. Are you active there?
Yeah, Twitter is probably your best bet. I'm also on Instagram too, but yeah, at Urban Legend 96. And you know, my favorite thing talking about football is kind of the intricacies of defensive line playing. So this was a lot of fun. But yeah, if any fans want to ask me questions or want to ask me about the finer points and those sort of things, I'm always open.
Okay, outrageous, fantastic stuff. Folks out there, we're still doing the That One Play series. Hit me up with a DM on Twitter. They're always open. If you want one particular play in Ravens history you'd like to talk about, implications, what you were doing at the time, why it created that stain on your carpet that's still there, all that's good. I want your perspective on that one play. So thanks for listening, folks. I know I've been having a lot of fun recording that series. Brent, thanks again for spending time out of your busy day to make time for this. Are you renovating a house now here?
Yeah, we just moved down here and dealing with renovations and all that craziness. So I'm not fully unpacked, but we're getting there, man. Been busy.
So is this a house in the Baltimore area or somewhere else?
It's in Austin. We actually live down in Texas. Yeah, my wife's from Baltimore, so it's great being there. But yeah, we decided to kind of have our off-season home down here. So yeah.
Terrific. Thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. I wanted to make a point of coming on because I do appreciate kind of how you touch, the finer points of the game and not necessarily just, talk about the same couple players over and over again, digging deeper and that whole kind of thing. I do appreciate, and we'll listen to your podcast from time to time.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I will talk to you next time on Filmstudy.
Welcome to BreezeLine, where the sky's the limit thanks to better internet. With lightning-fast speeds up to 1 gig, you can game like a boss, stream like a pro, and watch like there's no tomorrow. Stream, watch, post, send, and trend. Do it all with our fiber-powered network, bringing you reliable, fast internet. Welcome to BreezeLine. Visit breezeline.com for latest offers. Service subject to availability. New customers in select areas only. Visit breezeline.com for details.
Did you know Nissan EVs have traveled 8 billion miles? Just a quick trip to Pluto and back. And what did we learn along the way? Well, that an EV can take on the world, like the Nissan Leaf. It can move racing forward and take your breath away, like the all-new Nissan Ariya. We learned to make EVs that electrify. 8 billion miles driven by Leaf owners globally since 2010. 2023 Ariya has limited availability. All-wheel drive expected availability early 2023, subject to change.